Turning Engagement into Revenue, Facebook Monetization Strategies for Newsrooms. We're excited to welcome so many folks to our webinar today and look forward to sharing some practical strategies for turning your Facebook content into a revenue generator for your newsroom. If you have questions, please drop those into the questions box as we go through today, and time permitting, we will answer those at the end. Before we get started, just a little bit about us. Social News Desk empowers critical communicators with powerful, secure social media management and archiving software trusted by more than 10,000 professionals. We were founded in 2010, and since then, we've proudly supported America's largest news companies, cities, government agencies, school districts, universities, and businesses who require powerful, always-on social media tools. And just a little bit about me. I'll turn my camera on here. I'm Sarah Loyd, the head of product success and evangelism here at Social News Desk, based in San Antonio, Texas. I've been with the team for 11 years now, and prior to joining SND, I managed social media and worked in several newsrooms. And I was actually a Social News Desk customer before I joined the team. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. The address is there on the screen. And today I have Kelli Papendick from our client success team joining us. Kelli, please introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Sarah. As Sarah mentioned, I am a client success manager here at SND, based in Naperville, Illinois. I've been with the team for 5 years after spending more than 15 in digital media and customer service. And I'm also a former news producer and SND client myself. Would love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well.
All right, and I am pleased today to welcome one of our panelists. Unfortunately, August is having some technical difficulties. It's like live TV, y'all. Sometimes things happen, but we do have Tracy Maher with us today. Tracy, please go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here today. I am the Director of TV Digital Operations for Hubbard Broadcasting. We have 6 TV stations, 3 in Minnesota, 2 in New York State, and 1 in New Mexico. I have also been a Social News Desk client for, more than a decade, and I've been working in newsrooms for more than 15 years on the digital side, and really happy to be here today.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. And we have Tracy's LinkedIn there on the screen also, and I'm going to keep an eye out for August in case August is able to get in, but unfortunately, sometimes the live shots just go down, so we're gonna press on. There's August. August, thank you so much for hopping on. I know you were having some trouble. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm August Erbacher, digital director at Scripps. I work with our producer hub, which primarily works with smaller to medium-sized stations.
All right, awesome, and thank you for being here. I know we had a little bit of a glitch, but you're here now, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in.
All right, first, I just wanted to go ahead and have us take a quick poll here. Is your newsroom part of the Facebook monetization program? You should see the poll on your screen, and we would love for those of you out in our audience to go ahead and cast your vote. Looks like we're getting a couple of folks responding.
Yep, we got some results coming in. And if you are part of the program today, by the way, you can drop a note in the Q&A box as well and share your story. We would love to share some of your stories today also. All right, we'll give you guys just a few more seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and end the poll there. And it looks like we have a few who are, a few who plan to apply, and some folks who don't plan on joining, but maybe after today's webinar, you guys will change your mind. Hopefully we can shed some light on the process for you guys. All right, so now let's get into some questions for our panel. So first of all, what steps did you take to get into the Facebook monetization program? And Tracy, why don't you kick us off?
So we were fortunate that a couple of our larger newsrooms we were invited to apply via the Meta Business program. So we got on board with them, and then as soon as excuse me, we had them integrated, our smaller ones, we went ahead and applied for them to be included as well, based on the success we were seeing with those larger stations. It was Facebook went from a fairly negligible source of revenue to certainly not a primary source or anything close to that, but a much bigger jump than what we were used to seeing.
All right, that's great. And August, how about you guys?
So we started during the beta over the summer. We had a couple of larger stations get invites, and then more trickled in. And what we found that, and I do encourage people to check on this, we had some stations, all of our team has been by invite from Meta, but we had some stations not get a notification. Like there was no big announcement like, hey, check check your feed or anything like that. So I do recommend like check that monetization tab from time to time and just keep tabs on it, because there are times when either you may not get a notification, or we all know how many notifications our pages get. You may miss it, so give it a check sometimes.
Awesome.
That's a good point. That actually did happen with one of our stations. I went to go to apply and found out they were, excuse me, already eligible.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's great advice.
So if your newsroom is not yet part of the Facebook monetization program, you can use the QR code on the screen to learn more, or you can follow the steps on the screen to locate the in-app form on Facebook to express your interest. And as the team here already said, you never know, you already might have an invitation from Facebook to participate.
Yeah, and this is a great slide to screenshot if you want to grab that QR code for later on. And the next one, also probably a good one to screenshot as well if you are not yet started with Facebook monetization. So these are some of the documents that you'll need to get started. You'll need a government issued ID, a selfie or live photo for identity verification, your business's bank account details for payouts, and of course you want to make sure it is your business's bank account. We have heard of some stations that had some trouble with those payouts going to a personal bank account, which obviously is not what you want for your business. You'll also need a W-9 tax form, business documents, including your business registration and incorporation certificate, as well as your business's tax or license document. And then finally, you'll need to provide proof of eligibility and compliance with Facebook's monetization policies. So just a little bit of a checklist, things you may want to gather in advance once you start going through that process.
Alrighty, turning it back to our panelists, how have you shifted your Facebook content strategy as link posts have declined in performance? August, go ahead and kick us off.
Sure. This will sound like a wishy-washy answer, but I promise it's not. It varies so much market by market and station by station, what works versus link posts. It's funny, I was actually talking to stations just yesterday. I had one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and I literally was telling them to do the exact opposite of each other in terms of what was working well for their page. In terms of types of content, I think for us, knowing everyone's competitive and wants to see their pages do really well, I always stress caution that obviously we as brands have content strategy, and we shouldn't be sacrificing our brand or the big J journalism that we do, for something like this. However, if there are different post types that you find work really well for your market, or whether that's reels or graphics, for example, or it's different kinds of stories, like whether it's breaking news or happening this weekend, watching your wallet, things like that, that you are already going to do as a station and know if I showcase this one on Facebook, it's going to do better. I think that's where leaning into the data becomes really important.
And Tracy, how about you guys?
Yeah, similar story. What works in one market may work differently in another, and we really encourage our stations to take ownership of their own brands. They all have different things that they focus on. Kind of the bigger picture, 30,000 foot view, we're telling our stations to stop looking at Facebook as just a referral machine, and really as a tool that we can use to engage our viewers. in this day where I will say a lot of cultural volatility and, distrust in media, it's super important that we stay true to our values and our brands in the information that we are sharing on our pages. So we tend to really keep it super local. If we do share any kind of, network franchises or wire stuff, we try to make sure that it is always tied back to either something directly in our market or something that is strongly tied to user benefit. So as an example, we did some news you can use. We had one of our anchors did a piece on some consumer reports, product reviews on cleaning products, and she tied it into, you're getting ready for the holidays, you're getting ready for guests, and talked a little bit about some of the ones that got the best reviews. And that did really well for us, even though it wasn't our original content. By tying it into her personality as a trusted voice that represents our station and news that had a strong viewer benefit component, it did really well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear.
You guys know your audience best.
Absolutely. Yep. And the data doesn't lie for sure. So I know Kelli and I have definitely seen a shift in strategy from many of the news organizations we work with, including things like posts with links in the comments, like you can see here, which Facebook now says can be a best practice to increase distribution of posts. And we've also seen an increase in text posts as well, which is kind of a throwback to the early days of Facebook. If you've been around for a minute, you probably remember back in the day, link posts weren't supported and you always had to pop that link right there in the post itself, whether you posted as an image or a text post. So what's old is new again.
And here are some Facebook best practices and what they recommend. So first, experiment with some of those different content formats. Facebook says that you can earn money on video, reels, photos, stories, and text posts. However, they do notably leave out link posts. So try out those different post types and review what your audience responds to. Next, create original content, just like Tracy was talking about. According to Facebook, creators get better reach and distribution in the algorithm when they post more original content that they created. Plus, it's what makes you stand out from other news publishers and creators in the newsfeed. Finally, focus on engagement. According to Facebook, content that encourages reactions, comments, and shares tend to perform better. Pay attention to your metrics. You can use a tool like SND's Post Manager or our social summary report to help you focus on the metrics that matter to you. Also, pay attention to the comments. Your audience may give you ideas for that future content. And more discussion means more engagement, which of course can lead to higher revenue for your newsroom.
Yeah, those are. It's always rare that we actually get best practices from Facebook, so it's nice to be able to highlight those, kind of straight from the horse's mouth. So, all right. So we have another question for our panel. What data points? We've been talking a little bit about data. What data points help you guys decide which posts should prioritize traffic or referrals versus engagement versus revenue? Let's go ahead and start with Tracy.
So for revenue, we typically look at, we do have the monetization tab, which gives us that very direct information that's super helpful. But we're mainly looking at video views and then referral that traffic back to our site. And I will say that since our stations that have pretty much fully embraced the movement to either primarily video or image posts with the link in the comments, we've actually seen an increase in our click-through rates from Facebook. And then for engagement, we're looking at post engagements. We're looking at the the comments and the shares and things like that. So those are the major ones. And then we're also looking at the number of our followers, the kind of your starter pack of metrics that everybody has. And now, like I said, we're trying to look at it, on two fronts, both engagement as well as revenue. Okay,
great. And August, do you want to chime in?
Sure. So on our end, and similar to what Tracy's describing, I remember when we first realized, the link and comments thing is really working on Meta. for revenue. I remember starting to have that thought process of, okay, what's like the percentage of, if I were in one station as a digital director, what is the percentage of dip in referral traffic to the website that I would be okay with, you know, and where's the balance and all that. And then I didn't have to use any of it because we saw referral traffic go up too. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, so having that link and comment, that's something though that we honestly, we continue to monitor month after month. What's the referral traffic look like? It varies a lot market by market, you know, but overall has been increasing. We've, you know, seen it kind of all over the place sometimes. So I think it's worth looking into your specific market, what works with link and comments, and you know, get a couple months worth of data going. On engagement, Post Manager has been really helpful in Social News Desk. Those of us on the webinar who have access to a lot of different Facebook pages at once have probably already experienced that you really can only see within Business the Business Suite one page at a time for that data. So that's been really helpful using Post Manager and Social News Desk as a tool to see all of the pages at once and even posts from all of the pages at once. And being able to look at, okay, well, we posted really similar stories about SNAP benefits in these 5 markets, and here's the engagement that it had, and here's why that might be different. So looking at, you know, comments and shares has been really helpful in that view. And then from the revenue side of things, it's really just focused right within Meta Business Suite and tracking more so on a monthly basis. I think that we've strived to not get too granular with it because we still want our content to lead the way. And there's going to be days where you have one of the top 10 stories of the year. And you know, you can't let that be your decision maker for the next week, you know?
Yeah, you want to let things kind of normalize and even out a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and one quick note, whoever created the custom social summary at Social News Desk, I would like to buy them a cookie because it's super useful.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. I will spread the word, and maybe I'll buy the team some cookies because there were definitely a lot of folks involved. But yeah, I'm glad to hear it's cookie worthy.
I love that. Well, really, I mean, kind of piggybacking off what both Tracy and August were saying, whatever data points you are prioritizing, if you are an S&D client, use Post Manager. And as Tracy mentioned, our new custom social summary report to track how well your posts are being distributed. You can see which posts are generating the most engagement and even which posts are getting the most clicks. Now, keep in mind that for posts with links in the comments, post clicks might be a good indicator that there is interest in your link because Facebook does not track link clicks for links in the comments. All right, next question for our panelists. How are you coaching reporters and producers to adapt storytelling for photo or text forward posts instead of relying on the link preview? August, we'll have you go first.
Sure. I think the good news about this is that it's probably things that as digital managers or digital producers, we were already coaching our reporters to do anyway. I think kind of universally, regardless of platform, we've all learned by now that users don't really like to read and things like that, which is not a knock. It's just how we perceive things on screen, yeah. And that's okay. But really leaning into, you know, the visuals that you're using, paying a lot of attention to if you're making something with graphic on text or a text forward post, you know, the economy of words, which, you know, ironically is something that I learned as a broadcast producer, you know, so everything old is new again with this strategy is really what I'm saying. And it's a really good reason to get back with your teams on the fundamentals, because what we're seeing on this platform, just like any other, is that the fundamentals work, you know, so leaning into, you know, especially those of us who are in TV newsrooms, we have the benefit of you know, we're already a visual platform. What can we do to make the most out of that? And knowing that your audience may not see the headline, you know, they may see the description that you put into your CMS, you know, depending on how you're using autopilot and everything. But they may not see your headline on this one platform. How are you making sure that they still understand the story?
Tracy, how about you and your teams?
Yeah, I guess almost took the exact words out of my mouth. As broadcasters, you know, we kind of have a leg up because we're already visual storytellers. So that was pretty easy. We're already thinking it in that way. The bigger challenge from us was we've really tried to make the switch to vertical video because we can just use it across so many platforms. So one of our newsrooms actually created kind of a how-to guide, complete with screenshots of people like holding your phone, like do this angle or this angle, not that, and you know, really basic stuff because again, our reporters and our photogs are so used to, you know, using that 16:9 format. The other thing that we really want to make sure that we're doing is, pardon me, sorry guys, kind of focusing on the story that we're telling and encouraging people when we're doing vertical videos and that when we're doing these images to be very cognizant of what they're portraying and to stay away from doing like a tease, because really Facebook and social platforms are not the place to do a tease because they're so used to seeing that. You know, instead tell viewers why the story matters. Why is it important to you? And that's, we found a lot of success with that. And then the other thing, again, I am not a social news desk employee. I just play one on TV. Our stations that use the autopilot feature, we have made extensive use of the ability to create that language for the click the link in the comments as part of those RSS feeds. And so the other thing we're trying to remember, we're telling people, is be really mindful of your meta descriptions, your extracts, whatever that Facebook is pulling, because that language is what the viewer is going to see. And especially when we have that set up with autopilot, you know, you don't necessarily have that personal touch that you would with with direct posts.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, we've definitely built some tools in Social News Desk that can really help facilitate publishing posts that conform to those latest best practices. So for those text posts, we have added a background and text color picker in the post composer. So these are preset combinations by Facebook. But if you are building a text-only post without media or a link added, you're going to see a little button with 4 colored boxes. And then you can click on it to scroll through the options and use the preview tool in Post Composer to see how that combination will look on Facebook. So some of them are solid backgrounds, some of them have a little bit of a gradient, or they might have some images in there. And then the text color is also preset by Facebook. So just something to keep in mind. And then, of course, you can also use the scheduled comments feature to add your link instead of putting it in the body of the post, which should help increase distribution of your post as well. All right, so our next question, how do you ensure that high-performing Facebook content is consistently replicated without adding more manual work for your team? Tracy, you were kind of touching on this a little bit with autopilot. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so, you know, some stations, pardon me, are doing that. You know, the other one of the other strategies that we really encourage all of our newsrooms to use is looking at those metrics, seeing what's performing. You know, for one of our stations, their morning meteorologist does a morning forecast video that does really well. So they're really leaning into that. Pardon me. You know, we have a list of, so sorry guys, pardon me for 1 second. We have a list of the posts that are doing well, and we look at those as opportunities when there's high viewer interest to bring it back in case you missed it, kind of a format. So, you know, again, it's going to be different from newsroom to newsroom, but we look for those opportunities for either content type or topic that we know does really well and encourage people to focus on those. Because, you know, what we found with almost all social platforms is consistency and content are going to be your best friends. If your content is good, the post is more likely to do well, rather than if it's something that you've just quickly grabbed from your CMS just to get something up there and throw a post up. To really be mindful of what you're posting. Why is it important to our market? Why are our viewers going to care about it? And then again, to be really consistent. If we have newsrooms that only post once, per day, but it's very hit or miss, that content is not going to do as well. The algorithms do reward consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. August, how about you guys?
Sure. So the autopilot for image posts with linking comments has been really useful from Social News Desk, and the ability to have that run essentially, on the feed level has been great. One of the things that we've kind of had to, talk through as a team is getting comfortable with the idea of having different types of posts for the same story. And that's not duplicates to the user necessarily, because some folks will see one, some folks will see another. So getting used to that, but that autopilot feed has been really helpful to get that done, especially when we talk about the consistency level of making sure that that's constantly flowing. The other piece of that too, though, is getting the team used to a little bit more manual work too with Facebook, because there's now this different level of value to it. If I was told like a year and a half ago that I would be talking this much about Facebook in 2025, I would have, it's nuts,
right?
But here we are, because things change really fast. So kind of getting teams used to that idea of like, okay, I know what we told you a year and a half ago, here's what's changed and here's why, has been a piece of this. But I think having the autopilot to back up those manual efforts has been helpful, because it takes some of the pressure off feeling like they have to produce that consistency themselves every day, and having something like that running also, though, to Tracy's point on the earlier question, really increases the importance of putting high value headlines, descriptions, and thumbnails into your articles themselves. Because if that's what you're using to feed the autopilot, that means when you do it once, the posts in that autopilot are only going to be as good as what you put into it.
Yeah, kind of beginning with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you were talking about posting the same story in different content formats, that really reminds me of like my days as a producer, when you'd have like the package run at 5, the VO at 6, and then maybe the cut down package at 10. So you're repurposing that content in a few different ways. Yeah,
exactly.
It all comes to story rundown.
One other note, we also have started creating categories again so that we can use the feeds for autopilot of evergreen content and features, things that are not super time sensitive, that we know are very likely to do well if people see them more than once, or if they miss them the first time around. And that really has been helpful, particularly for our stations that have lower staffing levels, particularly, maybe in early mornings or over weekends.
I agree with that. And just off what Tracy was saying there, weekends especially, one of the things that I've encouraged stations to use Social News Desk for is the heat map of when they get the most engagement, on their page. And knowing that, you're probably still staffed for whatever your newscast schedule is. You might have some holes in the weekend and that kind of thing. That's where autopilot can really step in. And, if your heat map shows you have a lot of people checking out your content on Saturday morning, maybe you put an autopilot block in on Saturday morning to feed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And to kind of piggyback off what August and Tracy were saying, so some of those updates that we did make to autopilot will help support the monetization workflows. So you can use an RSS feed or an evergreen feed to automatically publish media or text only posts, and then even automate that link in the comments. And then you can also use the suffix as they were saying as well too, in that post message configuration to add that call to action to then view the link in the comments. And I know a lot of our news clients are doing that. So setting up this automated workflow helps to ensure your content is in line with Facebook's recommended post formats, and also helps save your team some time as well. Alrighty, so back to our panelists. Looking ahead, what do you think will define a high value post for newsrooms in 2026? And how are you preparing your team now for what's coming next? August, you want to kick us off?
Sure. We know, and I think probably everybody on this webinar has experienced more than once in their career, that Meta can change anything at any time and may or may not give us any notice that it's changing. So when I think of this and I think of 2026, I think that it's really important that we define high value for ourselves in terms of whatever fits your own content strategy, your own brand, your own newsrooms. But ultimately, to me, what I have seen work well on Facebook, on newscasts, on our websites, a high value post to me will have a very clear and easily understandable reason why I should care. So why I, as a user, need to know this information, or how it affects my day, my commute, what I was going to do this weekend, my wallet, things like, all of that stuff that I think we all learned as journalists to lean in on. But that's going to be the high value moment. And I think what's been really interesting about this Meta experience is it's really a lot of the things that I think we all learned as journalists in terms of producing a good newscast even are coming back through just on a new platform.
Absolutely. Tracy, how about for you?
Again, August is just, saying exactly what's on my agenda. We kind of have our three-pronged strategy, which is the high value post is going to ideally hit all of these metrics. Why is this story important? Here's how we're covering it, and here's why it matters to you. Here's how it's going to affect you. That's kind of the trifecta. Again, really focusing on highly visual content that is original whenever possible, that's very specific to our markets, our viewers, and why it's going to be important to them. And featuring, those trusted voices, those, our investigative reporters, our meteorologists, our anchors that are coming into people's living rooms. And, we do know from research that people do really have a strong, it's kind of like people grumble about Congress, but they love their own individual representative. People, like to really talk a lot and say a lot of negative things about the media, but for their choice, their station of choice, or their media publisher of choice, they do still have a high degree of trust on that. And, that's really the most valuable currency that we've got.
Right, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you guys so much. All right, Kelli, you want to give us a little preview of what's coming up next for Social News Desk?
Absolutely. So Sarah and I are going to be hosting our next SND webinar on Wednesday, January 21st. That is 2026, friends, at 2 p.m. Eastern. So join us to learn how to power up your posts with 10+ ways on how to get more out of SND. We're going to be sharing some advanced features of Social News Desk that make social media management faster, easier, and more effective. So you can sign up on the webinars page at socialnewsdesk.com or by scanning the QR code on the screen.
Yeah, and I'll give you guys a few seconds to grab a screenshot or scan that QR code. But again, we do have that on the webinars page over at socialnewsdesk.com, as Kelli mentioned. If you are not a Social News Desk customer and you'd like more information about Social News Desk, you can reach out to us at sales@socialnewsdesk.com, or feel free to start a free 2-week trial at socialnewsdesk.com/demo, and our friendly team will be happy to help you out. So let's get into some Q&A. I did see a question here. Beyond being granted the ability to monetize by Meta, Are there considerations for how to truly profit beyond just a few dollars? Is it page follow size? Is it reach or engagement roles? And this person is wondering how they can estimate the revenue they could expect. So Tracy or August, if you guys wouldn't mind maybe chiming in here and just let us know kind of what your experience has been as far as estimating potential revenue.
So that's a really tough one, because not only has it changed a lot over the course of the beta even, but it also fluctuates. You know, we expect additional fluctuation just because of how much Meta has changed. And I think that's why in my answers, you've probably heard me lean in on, you know, there are things that we know work regardless of platform. That's kind of why I lean into that, because it can kind of help outlast any changes that come our way with this. What I have found, you know, in terms of the referral traffic, that's something that, you know, we've seen that go up. You know, I think something that we can take away as newsrooms, regardless of the dollar amount that you see monthly, is, you know, this might mean that Meta's focusing a little bit more on local news again, which might mean more, you know, referral traffic for us long term, which is really good. So I would focus more so on that referral traffic, on views, on engagement, you know, than that specific dollar amount. I think once you get into the program, though, and you start to see what that can be, that's when you can really start looking at your own metrics for your own markets, and then forecasting out based on what you see, you know, the first couple months. But for me anyway, just knowing how fast things can change, I think it's more so the referral wins and the brand wins that are big.
All right, great. Tracy, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything August said, and the only other thing that I will add on, you know, correlation does not equal causation, but we have noticed some things that if a story really blows up on Facebook and we get the compensatory rise in referral rates, we'll also see pretty frequently a bump in our newsletter signups and things like that. And those owned platforms that we have are incredibly valuable to us, because we know, you know, those are the places where we can control the content. And so when people are coming to our site, and, you know, each story that we have, excuse me, every time a site visitor comes, they get a prompt to sign up for the newsletter. We have a recirculation widget with stories that are, you know, popular or have gotten a lot of traction over the last 24 hours. And, you know, those are incredibly valuable. So again, you can't necessarily equate or say that, you know, more people signed up for the newsletter because the story did well on Facebook, but we have noticed a correlation between the two.
Yeah, that's great that it's helping you guys increase your owned audience, because, you know, as important as Facebook is becoming again, it's still important not to put all your eggs in one basket. So yeah, that's great to hear that it's not just feeding revenue, but it's also feeding, you know, your contact list for your newsletters as well. All right, our next question here, have you seen success with text-based posts as far as reach and referrals go? And how do you make sure they don't appear as lack of context and clickbait? So the first part of that question, I know Kelly and I have probably seen an increase in how well text posts are doing, kind of surprisingly so. Kelly, would you agree with that?
I agree. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And then as far as making sure they don't appear that they have lack of context or clickbait, I think this probably goes back to what Tracy and August were saying about making sure it's really, you know, content like news you can use content, and not necessarily burying the lead behind the link, but making sure that piece of content is an actual valuable piece of content, like they're getting information from that post. Would you guys agree with that?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think this is a case of the old cliche, not all engagement is good engagement, where, you know, and I've seen those kind of in the wild, you know, on my feed, here and there, where you'll see, you know, a post and it's got a ton of comments, but a bulk of the comments are something like, where did this happen? Or, you know, this isn't local, or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think, you know, well, I don't have as much experience personally making those text posts. I think that that's something that you'd want to really hone in on is either the being as clear as possible about why this matters to your local consumer, or if you're using it as a conversation starter or something like that, that there's enough context there that it's not like, who's sad that it's raining today kind of content, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say our stations are really only kind of dabbling in the text post. They're getting back into them a little bit more, particularly now that we have some of those color options. Like, even if it's something that we know is just kind of a fun engagement post, like Vikings, we're in Minneapolis, so if the Vikings win with a score on a purple background, people seem to get a kick out of that. Or, an orange post, I know one of the stations did one, hey, show us your Halloween costume, or things like that. And those are just fun. And to me, that goes back to remembering that at its heart, Facebook is supposed to be a social platform, and it is supposed to be a place that encourages conversation and engagement. And so I think there is an opportunity for ones like that, but it's not our main focus.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you guys. All right, we have a question. Did you have to update your legacy pages to profiles in order to enter the monetization beta? So I believe, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe only pages are eligible. I don't think that this is eligible for Facebook profiles. So as long as you have that page setting turned on, you should be good to go there. All right. In terms of social strategy, have you found increased engagement as a result of how your posts are scheduled? For example, are you primarily scheduling links in comment posts or the posts by a few minutes, like 2:01 p.m. versus on the hour or half hour, like 2 o'clock p.m. straight up?
I think so. For me, there's enough variation market by market that I can say I have it. I don't think that has ever affected it as much as the content. I don't think there's ever a bad time to post good content, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, am I going to post it at 1 o'clock in the morning? Maybe not, but as far as like, the hour or half hour conversation, if there is a difference between those, I have never noticed it, beyond when I notice, oh, that picture wasn't great,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. Never a bad time to post good content. Like, we should make shirts.
And if you post something, where we kind of have a rough, we say any time from like 45 minutes to an hour seems to be sort of the sweet spot. But if something comes up and you just posted and you've either got breaking news or severe weather, or something just really good comes up and you have to post 15 minutes later, we would never let that stop us.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember back in the old days where posting, twice in a row was like the kiss of death for, the second post. And so everyone was trying at all costs not to post something within like 10 minutes of another post. But yeah, again, I think it goes back to, the type of content you're posting and the topic of the story that you're posting. And different things are going to hit different audiences. So again, mixing up the content formats, even for the same story multiple times, I think is a really great strategy as well. All right, well, that is all the questions we have. So we are going to end it there. And again, if you aren't a customer and would like to learn more about Social News Desk, you can get in touch with us here at the information on the screen. And thank you guys so much for your time and attention today. August and Tracy, I really appreciate your participation in our webinar today. I know it means a lot to our audience for you guys to be willing to share so much with them. And we've had a lot of, people are all ears about this topic. And Kelli, thank you so much for co-hosting as well. So hope you all have a great rest of your day and enjoy your Thanksgiving. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.